Greetings and welcome to Change the World. My name is Dauncey, and this is the show where we invite local people to come on air and discuss big, bold ideas for making a difference in the world and tackling some of these, frankly, sometimes overwhelming problems we seem to face. Anyway, today my guest is Craig Evans, a long-time Nanaimo resident who first came out here in the 1970s.
You bet, 1978.
And you were telling me that you were instrumental in starting the whole recycling program.
Yes, in those days there had been a number of attempts in Nanaimo in the early and mid-70s to get recycling going, but in 1978 the local chapter of SPEC, SPEC Nanaimo, received some funding in order to operate a recycling depot for a one-year period of time, hired 5 employees, got things off the ground, and very quickly we found out that the only time we were actually making any money was when we were doing curbside recycling pickup.
Right, so prior to that people would bring their materials to you, and you had to train people, presumably first time.
You bet, we went door to door, told them when, well first we had to get permission from the city, so we had to, that was very interesting because when we approached the city officials, they immediately said, well, this will never work.
Is this the Frank Ney era?
Yes.
Yeah.
They said, well, it'll never work. What, you're going to be picking up people's recyclables and selling them to market, and you expect that to work? And then we just said, well, you pick up people's garbage and take it to a hole in the ground and bury it, and you expect that to work?
It's like NASA saying to people, you want to take a rocket and land it on the moon? No, that'll never work.
So it was interesting. We got the approval from CUPE, and then we started the curbside.
CUPE is the Public Workers Union?
That's correct.
Yes.
And then we started collecting same day as garbage day every second week.
Makes
was
sense.
now a recycling day.
Right.
And so we ran that as a non-profit society until 1985, when the recession set in deep enough that the prices, we were getting like $100 a ton for cardboard and newspaper. Suddenly no one was even buying. And so it only took us 4 months of no income, no sales, until we had a mountain of material and knowing all our reserves.
That sounds like a crisis to me.
It was. Those were tough eras.
What did you do with the mountain of material that nobody wanted?
Finally, someone offered $5 a ton, and so we started loading up trailers. Whereas we would have gotten a couple $1,000s per trailer, we were now getting $100 a trailer.
So let me tell you my story from Victoria. I first arrived there in 1990, and I discovered that until 1910, the people of Victoria used to take their garbage and dump it on the low tide line. Then the tide would take it away. And then they decided that wasn't very kosher, so they said, well, put it in a barge and take it out to sea and dump it in the ocean. Then in 1958, they decided that's not very good. We'll dig a hole in the ground and bury it there. The hole was full, and by 1990, they had to drain a whole lake to put the garbage in.
You bet.
And now they're committed to zero waste. Do you think we'll ever get to zero waste? And what's it going to take to eliminate garbage so that everything's recycled?
I think we will get to zero waste. I think we've had a very interesting time with plastics. And we might end up, as a culture, thinking plastics have more cost to them than what we've placed on them.
Actually, I saw today's news that in San Francisco, the city is looking at a ban of styrofoam food containers.
Great.
So when you're going to buy food for takeaway, you've got to have some sort of totally recyclable container of your own, or bring your own Tupperware dish or whatever it would be, a glass dish.
Yeah. So I sit on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for the Regional District of Nanaimo.
Oh, right.
And we're entrusted to come up with a new solid waste management plan. We've just finished our second draft, soon to be brought before the public. But in that plan, the Regional District is committed to trying to achieve a 90% diversion rate within, I think, 2030.
So diversion means everything not going to the landfill?
That's correct.
What's the current diversion rate, do you know?
I believe it's about 875.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In Victoria, Greater Victoria, it's like 52.
Yeah.
Vancouver claims 60, 70. I think San Francisco is claiming 80, 90.
Yeah, well, we have that long history of recycling. So we have a generation of people who've grown up expecting recycling. So we have that great Nanaimo recycling exchange where people can bring the material
to. So Craig, have you, I know we're going to get onto food in a minute, that's what I want to, but have you been involved in recycling and waste for the whole of the 40 years past time?
Give or take, yes.
That's pretty.
There was a few years when I had headed up to here.
Yes.
And then thought, well, you know what? I would just like to get my hands in the dirt and
Right.
grow a decent meal.
Okay, so let's talk food.
You bet.
You are, and again, I'll read from my little list here, the past market garden manager at Providence Farm, the founder of Nanaimo Community Gardens, you're a board member of the Nanaimo Foodshare Society, you're a board member of the Farm Ship Growers Co-op down at Yellow Point, you're a board member at the Growing Opportunities Farm Community Co-op, and you're president of the Nanaimo Downtown Farmers Market Society, and you still get time to grow the food.
Yes. Luckily, board meetings, can last an hour or two.
Yeah, but
and
that's
then, where you make decisions with a group of people. And I like the cooperative
Yes.
approach to decision making. So then you with a group with a common mindset,
Yes.
come together, make the decisions that need to be made, and then go and do the work.
But that's an impressive record of community engagement, and it must give you a really good sense of the network, of who's doing what and what needs to happen, because you're seeing the perspective of all these different societies at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Well, after the recycling depot, after we had to fold
Yes.
due to economic conditions, then I realized, I was making like welfare wages. And I wish I could just grow food,
Right.
and rather than have to take the little amount of money I was getting.
Yeah.
And so I studied horticulture up at Malaspina
Oh.
College at that time, and took 3 years to do a 2-year diploma. I was taking my time.
Yes.
And then
You're sitting on 5 boards, it's not surprising.
yeah, and then came out of that knowing how to grow food, and I thought, well, what our culture needs, especially in Nanaimo, was a community garden system
Right.
throughout the city. So then just started working on community gardens, and then from there worked into larger parcels of land, working in cooperatives with more people with similar ideas.
How many community gardens does Nanaimo, or including the greater Nanaimo, have?
Well, gee, that's a good question now. There's at least 4 that I know of.
Yeah.
That are in operation. And so, the young professionals of Nanaimo established some community gardens, throughout the city. And then there's the Nanaimo Community Gardens Society.
Yeah.
They've lost a site or 2 over the last few years, but they're still going strong.
And now, so I don't want to run out of time here. Let's get to your big project, the one you're working on now.
You bet.
Take it from the top.
Sure. So I guess the natural progression from a community garden would be a community farm.
Yes.
And so the Nanaimo has a rich and diverse heritage of 5-acre farms in Harewood.
Yeah.
And so, the community of Harewood was at one time called 5 acres.
Wow.
And so there is a few 5-acre farms still available in Harewood that are being farmed, and there's one in particular that we've been farming on. This is our 3rd season
Right.
on this farm, and then we're looking to work with the community to raise the funds to purchase this 5-acre parcel.
So you sent me some photos. I'm going to bring up a slide. If we
bet.
can get the first photo up on air. I haven't got a screen I'm looking at. Can you see it if it's up? It's an
Yes.
overview of the land as a whole.
Yes, and so it's it's in between Park Avenue and Bruce Avenue.
Right.
It's a 5-acre parcel. It's quite unique in that it has a small tributary of the Chase River flowing through the property,
Oh, right.
an intermittent creek that with a pond as well. And there's, because of the stream and the aquatic environment, it plays quite well into being preserved,
Right.
in its natural habitat. There's orchids grow there.
Right.
There's
So let's run through the other slides, and
You bet.
then we'll go back to the ownership and all that sort of stuff. So tell me
Okay.
when these come up. This
Yeah, and so we, in addition, of course, for a parcel of land like that, we raise a lot of seedlings. So we have a greenhouse space leased out by the airport where we start up all our seedlings for the projects.
on a different piece of land.
Yep,
Yeah.
a different piece of property.
Yeah.
And there, using the greenhouse skills that I learned at Malaspina
Yes.
College, we work with volunteers
Right.
and just grow as much as we can grow.
So when this one comes up, salad,
You bet.
salad greens, right?
Salad greens, yeah, kale, lettuce, everything. And also food security doesn't just start with the plant, it starts with the seed. And so
Starts with the soil and then the seed. Yes.
Exactly. And so we are quite active in doing seed production,
Right. Excellent. Yeah.
breeding of plants.
So you're growing your own seeds for these plants, right?
That's correct.
So the next image now looks like irrigation happening here.
You bet. So at the site in Harewood, we use a lot of drip line irrigation, low water usage. So it's a great demonstration site to show people how, with a drip line, you can, we do 100-foot rows with a drip emitted periodically. It keeps the plants going quite well.
The next slide is showing
some
plants growing on the drip line.
Yeah, and this particular slide shows carrots being produced.
Right.
And so we have these carrots are being grown for seed production.
Yes.
And so we plant out carrots, like we grow them the first year.
This is your partner Jen Cody, who's really into carrot seeds, right?
That's correct. And so she'll grow out the carrots first year, then take the best of the carrots, replant them out the second year after she stores them for the winter.
Okay.
And then we have to grow them in an enclosure to stop cross-pollination with Queen Anne's lace, which is a wild carrot that's in the community. And then we release pollinators within the tents.
Right.
And the carrots get pollinated. We keep the varieties separate.
Yeah.
Works out quite well.
So the next slide
shows... and there's just a picture of sort of the farm being planted out. Mount Benson in the background. You'll see, that heads down to the intermittent creek, and surrounding this farm, it's all residential.
Yeah.
And residential areas, and it's being built up very quickly.
Right. And then we have this is the final slide, I think.
You bet. And there's a picture of Jen and planting out the carrots that are going in the tunnels that'll then have to be covered over to keep the external pollinators.
Do you know
in.
Michael Abelman from Salt Spring?
Oh, you bet.
Who did a huge urban farm, very similar, right in somewhere in California.
Yeah.
And very successful.
Yep. And so here, the whole 5-acre concept in Harewood was a brainchild of the new Vancouver coal company manager, Samuel Robbins, who he was running the coal company and he realized that if he wanted to keep the best miners living and working in Nanaimo and not chasing every pipe dream, every gold rush, every other opportunities, he needed to make sure that they had access to cheap land. And he felt 5 acres at a suitable price, lease to own. He had lease to own for like 21-year terms.
So the actual coal miners would be able to have the 5 acres.
That's correct. And he would offer it at like $50 a year for the first few years, like very reasonable prices. And then when they needed coal miners, the coal miners would be working in the mine. And then sometimes, depending on the economic system at the time, there'd be depressions and they wouldn't need, there'd be no more ships calling for a while.
Yes.
So then the coal miners would go back to their property, continue with the farming. They'd feel like they were kings in their small little kingdoms.
Selfishly, he's getting continuity of his workforce. They're not moving off down to some other country.
That's correct. And he's building a community.
Wow.
He helped build the community of Nanaimo
Did those
through
miners, does miners' lettuce come from them?
That's good. It's a
kind of salad green, isn't it?
It is a salad green, but it's one of the earliest crops that's ready in this area. But miners' lettuce is all over the world.
We've got that name somehow, though.
You bet.
Yeah. So, how many people are working on this land now?
And so, it varies, according to the time of year. Right now, we probably have about 15 people regularly coming out and helping out on the farm.
Okay.
We're doing transplanting in the greenhouses.
So you have work days?
Yep, work parties, usually like Saturdays.
Yes.
And we try and keep it short, 6 hours, maybe like 10 till 4, that sort of thing. Everyone's so busy, and spare time is important.
And are some of those people from the surrounding houses?
Not as much. They're from the greater community.
Right. Okay.
So, and then another hat I wear is a work site trainer at Vancouver Island University.
Yes.
And so, I work with a lot of students who have challenges and disabilities.
Yes.
And we teach them employability skills and the skills they need to keep and maintain jobs. And of course, farming is not that it's like extremely easy, but the skills required are very easy to learn, and it's best done in a group.
Yeah.
And so we usually hire about 5 or 6 students every summer to help maintain the farm and keep things growing.
So which non-profit hat are you wearing when you're doing the Harewood farm?
And so that's Growing Opportunities Farm Community Co-op.
Okay.
And that's a non-profit cooperative,
Yeah.
and its main purpose is to engage people, to see, basically to engage them so they can educate themselves in how to grow food, how to prepare food, how to store food.
And how secure is your lease or rent of the land?
You know, unless
Someone else owns it, right?
someone else owns it, but we're in negotiations for purchasing the property,
Right.
and then at that point we'll have an announcement to make.
So is it all private? Can I ask how much it's going to cost to purchase the property?
Well, it'll cost like over $1 million, probably $1.5 million, like to purchase the property and put some of the infrastructure in place,
Right.
in order to keep it as a farm. But
So-
you know, we just think that of all the 5-acre parcels that were
Yeah.
part of Harewood in the beginning, we really need to preserve one of them,
Yes.
just as an example of how Harewood got started, how Nanaimo got started, and to honor the legacy of Samuel Robbins.
So how do you go about raising $1.5 million without feeling overwhelmed and not sleeping at night?
Well, you know, a lot of people say that's a lot of money.
Yes.
And I guess it used to be a lot of money, but when you look at the price of an average house in Vancouver, it's, you know, for 5 acres.
Oh, I see. You just need one person from Vancouver to say, oh, I'll come over and I'll have a cottage and you can...
Yeah. Well, even in Nanaimo. So the average price in the central Vancouver Island, is this the price of 2 or 3 homes?
Yes.
And so,
would you have any homes on this land?
well, there's one home on there at present, which
Okay.
is the way it's designed, it's very easily converted into a larger commercial kitchen.
Right.
So Nanaimo Food Share owns its property on Pine Street, where
Yes.
we've been operating for the last 17 years.
Yeah.
But it's kind of cramped now, you know, and
Yes.
and so if we could get a larger house, and we'd have a bit more space. And so
Right.
I think that's part of the plan.
But none of this explains how you raised $1.5 million so far.
Then it's, you know, with any campaign, you give
the
charitable
call out.
receipts,
Yeah.
and you put the call out.
How much have you raised so far?
We haven't started raising. We're just in negotiations for the price, and
Right.
then we're talking with our other community partners as to who would hold like the covenants to make sure it stays
Yes.
as a agricultural land trust. So much more secure than land would be in an
Yeah.
agricultural land reserve.
So then once you've got the legal pieces in place, I can look forward to some big community feasts with
You bet.
dinner plates at $100 a piece, right?
Long tables.
Beautiful.
You know, yeah.
Musicians.
And so in
local
celebration of like Canada's 150th,
Yes.
you know, if 150 people each donated $7,000, we'd be there.
You'd be there.
And so you can see, I think in a campaign like this, you end up with a few large donations, a few corporate donations, and then many smaller donations.
Well, there was a pub in England, in Yorkshire Dales, that had gone bankrupt in the 2008 financial crisis, and then 250 of its customers got together and collectively put in the money to buy it, and the average share, because it's a co-op, was £500, which is like close to $1,000.
You bet.
7,000 makes me go, oh, that's, no.
Yeah.
I can see myself stretching to, maybe we could donate 500
You
for
bet.
phase 1.
Yeah.
And 7,000 makes me feel, but I'm not super wealthy.
I understand. And then also, what if your support for the project just meant that you would try and buy as much of the produce or products that came from this farm as you could?
Well, for the Nanaimo residents, we live down in Yellow Pond. We have our own farm, so we're growing and
You
buying
bet.
there. But for the residents in the city,
It'd be the closest,
Yes.
you know, like 0 miles to their from farm to plate,
Yeah.
pretty well. And so, you know, the average family spends a bit on, you know, fruit and veggies.
Yes.
And so that's one way to consider. You could buy in and then, you know, receive a discount or
so do you think
something.
that by midsummer and the 150th day celebrations, or are you going to wait to the fall for the great long table feast and the...
Well, you know, there's a few more board meetings to go.
Yes,
And I
okay.
don't want to jump the gun.
Right.
So, but we are going step by step, and it's a big goal. Nanaimo used to have a 5-acre parcel that was on the Heritage Registry. It ended up being purchased by a developer, and housing's on it now.
And could you have, I'm picturing this image of the long table with the white cloth and the 150 people.
You bet.
Would that be on the land, hoping for a nice sunny day?
Yes.
Because I can picture this, if you set a goal, we need 500 people to have a circle on the farm. Hold this, because when you're holding that intention and sharing the vision, it's more powerful than just getting a letter in the mail saying, can I make a donation? To be on the land, feel it, do something together.
You bet. Yep. And in the neighborhood plan that was drawn up for Harewood in 2013, this piece of property has been identified as one of the pieces that should be acquired by the city of Nanaimo in order to preserve the special aquatic habitat, and also for the neighborhood wanted it preserved as open space.
Would you allow some small community gardens as part of it so people can have their own little allotment?
Well, what we are doing, we have funding this summer to have 2 students from VIU, Masters of Community Planning, help engage the community to see what's the community vision for the parcel.
Because it's in the middle of London, the most crowded city out, well, not like Beijing, but pretty crowded. There'll be the land set aside exactly like this, and allotments which are maybe 30 foot long, and everyone's got a little shed, and it's a social connection as well as the food, and people just love it. They just love it.
Yeah, in today's busy world, there's something still to be gained, just by working the earth. Yeah. And there's an old saying, it's the simplest method from the land to the hand to the mouth. And if people, that's what we need to develop.
I see some urban gardens where they're very functional, but the way they are in London, you can have a little garden shed, and at the corner you put a little chair out. And you know what it is, when I've been gardening, after a bit of work, you want to sit back and just breathe the air and gaze at it and feel good.
You bet. Yeah, exactly.
It's not just non-stop work.
Yeah, and this parcel also provides habitat, for the birds. Yeah. So do
you have when the covenants are on, are you going to be committing to be organic as a method for the whole thing?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, we're organic because there's really no other way.
So give me your vision. We've got 5 minutes left. In 5 years' time,
so the
magic time capsule, you're now arriving there. Describe it to me.
Yep. So the property would have been purchased. So the present owners have been paid for the property. The property is in an agricultural land trust, so it'll always be agricultural land for generations to come, and we'll be developing programming for the different groups, interest groups, programming for seniors, programming for Autism Society, programming for the neighborhood association. We might need a new barn, raising that's more of a art studio, meeting space, processing center, and then we'd be looking at, this tributary from the Chase, over the years, parts of the tributary have been put in culverts and placed underground. And so we'd look, what's the master plan to restoring this tributary so it can be, salmon bearing again. Because the Chase River.
So on any particular day, any hour, daytime, you could have 30, 40 people doing various things?
That's correct. And we'd like to see a trail system from Park to Bruce Avenue through this property, so it could be part of a community trail
and a
network.
Running trail around the perimeter for joggers?
That's not a bad idea. Yeah, definitely. And then maybe you'd want, if FoodShare, is using the house, maybe you'd want to go to the property and have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, something local. Yeah. There'd be a market stand at the front of the property where you.
So if you had a kind of cafe there, you can drop by, meet some neighbors, and do some weeding, and have a cup of coffee with friends as well.
That's correct. Yeah. So I think that's that's sort of the vision, and at present, if things go the way that they have been going, we risk, losing agriculture in the Harewood area.
The numbers vary, but importing 95% of our food on the ferry for everything we're growing.
You bet.
And also, I mean, I worry about children and younger people stuck on their devices, not having ever handled a worm, not ever having got their fingers dirty, not ever knowing where food comes from.
Exactly. So we really need to have programming that engages
So
the school district,
could be coming out and doing classes on the land.
That's correct. You bet.
Yeah. This is such an important vision. What's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
Most
personally?
rewarding? I'm not sure. It's, everyone, I think I just enjoy agricultural work.
Right.
It's a very long, I have a very long history with just producing food.
Yes.
And I think that's the
You've got a favorite crop you like?
I would say kale.
Okay.
Yeah, kale in all its varieties. So,
kale just seeds itself, doesn't it?
well, we've gathered up a number of varieties from around the globe, and
Yes.
we're cross-breeding it and coming up with kale that's a little more frost hardy than normal and has a little more color than normal.
And some
leaf
kale,
varieties.
some kale can be really tender and juicy, and some can be pretty tough and chewy.
You bet. And so, but the tough and chewy and the fibrous kale could survive those frosts, no problem.
Interesting.
And then come, the second week in January, you are so happy you have like a bushel of this kale.
So if people want to get involved and help out, it's called, what's your name for the farm?
5 Acres Farm.
That's its official name? It's going to stay the 5 Acres Farm because of the history tradition, right?
That's correct.
And how can people get in touch if they want to help out or donate funds or join in?
And so they can contact Nanaimo Food Share at 250-753-9393.
We'll get that up on the screen so that people can
Perfect.
see that.
Yep.
And then if they want to come and volunteer,
Yep, they just go through Nanaimo Food Share, and it's the Urban Farm Project.
well, this is great, Craig. I mean, I want to thank you on behalf of the citizens of Nanaimo for sort of producing what, once you're established, it's going to be there forever.
Hopefully, that's the plan.
In 200 years' time, there'll be a little shrine for you, like one of our founders, and for the other guy.
For Samuel Robbins.
Samuel Robbins, the coal mine owner.
You bet. And he was the manager, but he donated so many of the parks in Nanaimo
Here's
as
to
well.
Samuel Robbins and to you, Craig. Thanks for doing all this work.
Thanks, Guy.
This has been Change the World with Craig Evans. If you enjoy this, tune in next week and we'll have another scintillating, I wish we had another half hour kind of discussion. Thanks very much.
Great.